Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life.
Welcome back to the 817 podcast. My name is EJ, and my co-host Jimmy are here to talk about the lovely city of Fort Worth. We do this every week, Monday morning. We have 3 short stories, big stories, wins and losses, and we just talk about politics, business, the future, economics, culture of this city, and where it's going. And we've had 2 really strong episodes the last 2 weeks, really focusing on the branding, the auditing of how well we're doing with this new leadership change with Maddie Parker, our city council. But Jimmy, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. I am ready to dive into this week. I feel like it was a slower news week. And so where usually a couple of these things might have just appeared as updates that we do at the start of the show, we're kind of stretching them into some bigger themes and figuring out how to really delve into these topics a little bit more. But as always, thanks to all of the great publications that we have in the city that we get to peruse through and pick out stories from that we think are worth highlighting. Before we get going, the next 2 weeks, we are going to be out. So you're going to have 2 Mondays without the 817. I hope you can get into your week in a different way. Replace us temporarily, but come back.
Yeah, we're going to be gone throughout this quarter. I mean, really, with the holidays and a couple things going on. But we're going to try to do our best, especially with the election coming up, keeping up to date where we are with there. By the way, if you're listening to this on the 10th, we got 24 hours to make sure our registration for voting is there. If we know people who hasn't registered yet, take them out to lunch. Take them to the voting place, make it happen. So make sure you do that.
Yeah, and double check. Even if you have voted 5 times this year, double check, because I was a little bit thrown off. There was a number released earlier this week of the number of registered voters in Texas, and the number has only increased by 500,000 since 2020. And that struck me as low, considering all of the population growth that we have had. And, we know that, voter rolls get purged from time to time. So even if you think you should be registered to vote, make sure you double check before end of the day on the 11th.
Yeah. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. I'm really excited. One, I'm really excited because as I'm always very self-conscious about the pod when we don't have a lot of guests and we don't keep a strong guest book for the pod. Will you guys still listen to me and Jimmy banter about the city? And you know what? What we have is a core group of people who listen to 817 podcasts very tough and very strongly. And that is I just want to say I appreciate you guys. It's fun to dive into this stuff more. I feel like we get to when it's just me and Jimmy. We get to read and talk about the story on the 4th page of Wednesday's paper and find a data point that wouldn't be addressed if we had interviews. But so I just want to say, it really warms my heart to have a really core group of you still rocking with us at the 817 podcast.
Yeah, we appreciate that you continue to listen. Okay, let's dive in. Our first short story. This is something that we talked to Christina Brooks about and hit on in our interview with Dante Williams. If you missed those, make sure you go back and listen. But a review of Fort Worth's incentives agreements reveals big revenues, but also shortfalls in contracting with minority-owned businesses. A review of the economic incentives for 2021 shows the city received $58.9 million in revenues from various projects, but that goals for minority and women-owned business participation in the incentives are not yet being met. According to the review, that revenue is generated by 43 agreements and is about 7% of the city's total revenues. Overall, the report says that $16.5 million was committed in 2021 toward minority and women-owned companies and economic incentive agreements, but only $12.4 million was verified. In 2020, $39 million was committed, but about $36.3 million was verified. which that in itself, I was surprised. That's a pretty big drop off from year to year.
Well, I'm assuming that just has to do with pandemic needs and maybe like the expectations of what you need to hit as benchmarks was lower due to that as well. So you probably had a stronger conversion rate there simply because of that. That's what that looks like to me.
Yeah. But this is something the city set out a while ago to try and achieve, and it feels like we're really struggling to get to the benchmark numbers that we have set for minority and women-owned businesses. And I think Dante said it well, or he was talking about how, like, yes, like, that's out there. You know, some people don't know about it. Like, there's a communication gap, and then there's also, like, the contractor side, too, where they're maybe not knowing exactly how to tap into it. So, like, a little bit of give and take on both sides, but I feel like this is something that hopefully, you know, really quickly Fort Worth will start to actually address more.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, what you're seeing is that it's Robert Stearns and the Economic Development Department. You know, they really do a good job for not having a budget to really give anything to cities, and so these benefits, that these incentives are really contingent on jobs. They're contingent on revenue goals, things that allow us to award them, not just give them money. This is to everyone, regardless of diversity. I think the issue here, though, or the challenge is we need to, and I'm not saying it's an economic development's job to do, it's more of like a city priority or even just people as a whole of what do we do to help businesses of color thrive when you're creating these systems that you want them to play off of that maybe aren't really meant for them. Like the Kimpton guy, the Fort Worth Kimpton Hotels project, had a lot of institutional investment. A guy who was senior leveled, you know, has a lot of background, was, you know, wealthy already. Like it was easy for, I would feel like, him to hit his capital investment. Where others, if you're trying to come off, you know, if you're originating your wealth, these standards might be harder to hit, and who you know and how to collaborate to help you get to those incentives, so that you can at least get to the number, is not as available to you. So I just think there's a lot. I mean, it kind of gives me thinking about college access stuff in the sense of like ACTs and SATs. Like, why are like, wow, we have the same tests, but, you know, black and brown kids aren't doing well on the tests, but they don't get like the summer camp, the courses and all that stuff. This to me is kind of that same kind of thing that I think Dante was also kind of confronting in his interview.
Yeah. And one thing I appreciate that the city of Fort Worth and the economic development team do is that the like incentives for these companies are performance based. So if you're not hitting your goals as far as minority and women owned businesses go, then you don't get your full incentive. So of the companies that Fort Worth report dove into, Kimpton Harper was the only one that got their full incentive because they hit their mark, whereas Benny Keith got about 75% of theirs, and Ariat only earned 15% out of the available 25% construction incentive. So I'd appreciate that, like, the city is making it performance based in that way. I would love to see some like follow up or you know, conversation to continue to urge those businesses to hit those marks. You know, like next time that Benny Keith comes and says, like, we want to make an investment, like, hey, like you missed the mark here last time. We need like upfront for you to show us this, or we can't give you as much unless you are actually like committing to and hitting this, because there's obviously incentive for the companies to meet those goals, but if they're just going to come back, you're going to give them another incentive later, like there's no punishment or follow-up to it too.
Yeah. And you also, like, I think about, I was driving around the other day in Fort Worth and was like, man, there's a lot of like just dead buildings with like businesses. Like, how do you still operate here? But I think a lot of it also is just like, if you come from a generational building where it's like, oh, the building's kind of paid for, or things kind of happen, you can kind of be, just a business that exists, and then like tax write-offs and all this stuff if your business is, under, like, you're not profitable. And so it's just like, I feel like, what's the leash for performance when when like, I just feel like there's so much things in Fort Worth where it's just like people are just sitting on something that their families had for a while. And now it's just like a thing, but there's no urgency for them to hit benchmarks,
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know. I think like, I think this is a small business national situation as a whole as well.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know if you saw, but Rivian got their deal with Atlanta taken up from them. The $5 billion plant in Georgia loses the property tax break after judge unexpectedly throws it out. The electric vehicle maker was projecting to hire 7,500 people east of Atlanta. They say they disagree with the decision, but I think that's an interesting story when we talk about hitting benchmarks. Even those that get the most biggest perks across the country can't hit the goals of today. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go to the second story. The second story, by the way, the first three stories that we're going to hit today are short stories. It's all kind of around, we decided to keep it a theme, and I'm pumped for the theme. I don't know if you guys already saw our title, but you had to press play. We were very proud of that title, and that's the big story, is Fort Worth overcooked? And I can't wait. But the first three short stories are about kind of diversity, advocacy of diverse populations in Fort Worth, what's happening, what's not happening. The first one was about businesses not hitting their needs. The second one is about how a group of 15 leaders in the Fort Worth community convened to address maternal and infant health. It was also organized and moderated, it seems like, with Maddie Parker there. But however, people in the city are kind of concerned and was upset that there wasn't any groups that reached out to Black-led grassroots organizations that support moms and babies. Something that is popular that we all have to be aware about is that Black mothers and infants face disproportionate risk during pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum period compared to other demographic groups. I mean, this is such a big topic. You even hear Beto talk about this anytime he's talking about abortion and healthcare access. And so really the kicker here is just like there was an open letter announcing the initiative. It was signed by 11 CEOs or president CEOs to president, a dean, and the mayor. Although the working group does include Black women, there's no organization that specifically work in or for Black communities, said Misty Wilder, the former chair of Health Equity Alliance of Tarrant County. When you don't have leaders of program that offer direct services to families at the table in situations like these, it's always best practice to ask yourself questions like, where are you getting your perspective from? Whose voices aren't being heard but need to be? So this is kind of the take. This kind of just kind of goes on to something we continue to talk about as maybe a kink in Parker's skill set or abilities, and that's how to create, equity wasn't, I feel like, her strong suit. When we kind of talked about her state of the address about the city last week, we kind of talked about this is probably her issue right now. It's probably like where she could most improve. What is your kind of take on this? What do you see that I missed?
Yeah, I feel like she even tried to put the blame or onus back onto these organizations. And she said the press release is just one document. We were very clear. Please come to us if you have interest in doing this work. And yes, that's true. But also, if you're getting CPR or emergency trained, part of that says you don't just call out someone call 911, right? You point specifically to somebody, you call someone out specifically and say, I need you to call 911. If you're just putting out a blanket, oh, somebody come do this, somebody come help me, that doesn't work. And the burden should be on her, and the burden of a leader should take that burden to say, I'm setting this up. I have looked up or researched these specific organizations that do this work, and I'm reaching out to them individually. One, it provides more value and purpose behind it, and two, it says that you are actually wanting to do the work to make this be successful. If you're just saying, hopefully someone's gonna come and try and help with this, that's not how things get done and how problems get solved. And so I would hope that as a leader, she would look at this and say, yeah, you're right, I should have made more of an effort. I want this to be a priority, and so I'm putting something into this, as opposed to kind of checking off, I think we probably need to do something about this. Let me, I'll throw together a working group and we'll call it good. I checked the box on it. I can say, come re-election time that I did something for this cause. And so I just feel like it was kind of a fumbled thing that really wasn't that hard to make right.
Yeah, no. And if you look at the history of infant mortality in Tarrant County, 18.3 women died during pregnancy within 42 days of birth for every 100,000 births in Texas. So that's for the state. In 2015, there hasn't been recent statewide data on maternal mortality data scheduled because there was supposed to be a release in 2022, but now will be instead 2023.
Which that we covered last week or 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
And so, all in all, I could totally see this being something that, obviously it's all the things that the mayor is working on. There's no way that she hosted, organized, and invited the people here. There's someone on her team who's responsible of organizing and thinking of all parties. And so, hey, this is a tough job and hard to please everyone, but this is something that seems reasonable.
Yeah, and do we really not have a list of every category in the city of things going on? Does the city legitimately not have the ability to say we're doing something with pregnancy centers? Let's look up all, let me do a Excel sheet search for pregnancy centers. Hey, we're looking up barbecue restaurants. Let me look up all the barbecue restaurants. Is there really not something where you could in 2 minutes get a comprehensive list or near comprehensive list of everybody doing this, and then, from there start reaching out to people? I feel like that's something that the city should have, given they have all of our business data and everything.
Yeah. That data was 2015, so even if it's outdated by 2015 or something, so many things pop up and out, I feel like, when it comes to nonprofits in the area as well, or things around public health and community health. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that looks. But let's go ahead and dive into our third story. You want to hit that for us?
Yeah, this is something that we used as a win maybe a year ago, but The National Institute of Health is giving $149 million to researchers at the UNT Health Science Center to pay for researchers to study the biology of Alzheimer's disease in multiple racial and ethnic groups. It will fund the first large-scale study of the biology of Alzheimer's in the 3 largest racial and ethnic groups in the U.S. The trial will recruit and enroll Black Americans, Mexican Americans, and non-Hispanic white Americans. The study's focus on health disparities across racial and ethnic groups addresses one of the biggest flaws in clinical research in the U.S. today. Really awesome. I remember when they announced that this was originally coming here, we were like, oh, that's really cool. UNT Health Science Center continues to bring in a lot of people doing really high level research and really high level projects. And so it was exciting now to a year later, however long later, to see an update and that, they've got $150 million in funding to make this study happen.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really neat to see long term. They're going to be tracking a group of people for a long time to make this happen, and that's just, I think, really going to be powerful data to receive. But it's crazy. I mean, you talk about the lack of research on Black and brown people. I mean, even women are pretty brand new too. It's so crazy that it was just we tested for drug, what are the reactions to drugs and what's the symptoms if you take certain medicines and things like that, and we would only test white men, and then their reactions to it. And you really think about the biology of like women and how different it is to males. It's a crazy the fact that we didn't take that into account to I'm talking 30 years ago.
Yeah.
We're talking the 1990s. I feel like women were advocating to also if you're going to do something about health, you have to have research not on just white men. You have to have women as well. And so now you're adding, Alzheimer's, who impacts Black and brown people at big rates. And as we all live older and longer, I just read something the other day. It was in the Economist article this week in a magazine. The title of it was "Elderly Population Means More Government Spending." And the article basically said for every 100 people that are 25 to 64, there will be 75 South Koreans over 65. And for the United States, it's 50%. So for every 100 people between 25 and 64, there is 50 people who are 65 or older in the United States, which kind of, to me, relaying it back to what you just talked about, is you look at this long-term investment of this research and what type of impact it can have on Alzheimer's. If we're able to solve cures or solve problems here now, as we all get older and government is having to spend on Social Security and things like that, and the cost of supporting and having people who are older but still independent, still functioning. I mean, the long-term investment of this money is huge. I mean, this type of stuff is going to be crucial long-term.
Yeah. And it speaks to the diversity of the area, right? The research will involve 4,500 participants recruited from North Texas. About 3,000 people are already enrolled in the trial. The expanded research funded by the grant will allow researchers to recruit participants as young as 30 now. Just the fact of being able to hold a trial this large, I think is a cool testament to how diverse of an area we live in. You ready to move into the big story?
For sure.
All right, bring us in.
All right, so we were just thought we were going to give we were reading all this stuff this week, and we just thought we were going to just give an update on David Cook, right? We're and an update is, this is where it is. The biggest update that everyone knows is that the city council has removed David Cook reprimanded him from anything that has to do with talking about Sundance Square. So that means when the city is talking about Sundance Square, David Cook cannot be there. That's basically the punishment that he has received from city council. They did that They discussed that on Tuesday in the meeting. And really, though, what made this the big story and why we titled it is Fort Worth Overcooked is because the Fort Worth Report had a deep article around just kind of Sundance and the involvement the city has with them long term. Also discussing all the other things that Sasha Bass touches in Fort Worth. And to me, it just felt like it got very deep and it got even more suspicious as even just the Sundance party compared to the David Cook party compared to the city department's party. Like, no one seems like they're speaking to each other on all being on the same page. So I'm just like even more confused. So what were some things you saw in this story that, you know, kind of maybe gave you some alerts?
I thought it was pretty sketchy that up until now, the policy regarding the public improvement district of Sundance Square was a rare instance where David Cook was designated to be a final decision maker, because usually for most things that is the city council. And to me, I was just like, man, like they set this thing up to where they could just have their, you know, buddy that they're taking on private planes and giving fancy things make all the decisions that benefit them best. And so, like you said, how deep and how long-term has this lack of separation of powers or like decision makers actually been going on? Like, we've always talked about how Fort Worth is kind of, you know, ruled by this like wealthy few that are just kind of like behind the curtain pulling strings. And it's like, yeah, literally they put a guy in place and then gave him the power to make all the decisions that benefit them, but like only in that case is he the one making these decisions.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was just to me like this is, I mean, you can just tell he's just like being grumpy throughout all of this. Like he's not being a like team player or a coachable player. He's just like, I don't want to do this, but fine, I'm going to take Sundance from me and I won't talk about it then.
Yeah.
But like the Basses like touch so many parts. They touch the zoo, Dickies Arena, the livestock show,
all
Will
the
Rogers
museums.
Memorial
Yeah.
Center. And then, you know, Visit Fort Worth. I don't know if you saw in the Star Telegram. I swear they wrote it for, they knew it was going to make us go crazy, but it was something around how Sasha Bass owns the Visit Fort Worth. It literally said that.
Mm-hmm.
She also owns Visit Fort Worth. And I'm just like, now you're talking about that. And if you look at that data here, what is it? The city's Culture and Tourism Special Revenue Fund, which primarily funds Visit Fort Worth, will receive over $46 million in funding for 2023. Like, $46 million. And then if you really think about it, it's like this whole hotel tax revenue thing goes to Visit Fort Worth. So now us normal folks are getting taxed to go, and our friends and people are getting taxed, and tourists are getting taxed here to then fund, you know, if Sasha Bass owns the Visit Fort Worth, her like marketing project for the city, and then they pick festivals. I looked up the Aspen Snow Fest or whatever, and like it was definitely a festival for their target audience. Like it wasn't like, this did not, like, of all the cool festivals out in this country, you definitely picked like one that just like fit their vibe. And like now you're trying to act like, oh, we went to support Leon Bridges and we helped Leon Bridges get Jazz Fest. Leon Bridges didn't need your help to get Jazz Fest. If anything, he helped y'all look cooler to your friends in Aspen. All right. And like, then they got other friends there, and they're all like, Sundance is just talking about how like great it is that, hey, we were able to take this trip and enjoy great friends, music, and art while proudly promoting our amazing Fort Worth. I'm like, that, I don't know. And just like how much investment the city gives to Sundance, and then that's how they look at like oh, we can have a win-win-win lifestyle about doing this. Like, oh, we love to travel. We love to socialize. We love to drink. Oh, and look, we're working. Like that is so like, I don't know. Not like, I just feel like sketchy to then think this is like, oh, thank you for representing our city really well. Really appreciate it. I wish I can not have to, me and my family are going to Puerto Rico. Can I somehow spin this to Fort Worth and say, hey, we're having a good time representing Fort Worth, like, and bring some friends and call it a day? Like, is that the logic model of like, oh, when we should be, oh yeah, this was a good thing for Fort Worth, when really you just took all your friends to do this? I don't know. It just got really sketchy when you look at the article.
Yeah, it does feel like a random thing for Visit Fort Worth to be sponsoring. But then also, like, the other people from Visit Fort Worth that got to go did not fly on her private jet there. Like, I feel like them trying to spin it as, like, a work thing just makes it even worse, because it further shows that you are only giving this special privilege to him. You're giving him special treatment so that he will make decisions that benefit you. And
that's the other thing, though. They go, it's a business trip, but he's saying, no, it's a private trip.
Yeah.
So it's just like, which one is it? And so then it just like goes down to like, look who else was invited. The ambassadors attending the Colorado Festival included Mitch Whitten, Craig Cavalier, managing partner of Stockyards and Heritage Development Co., Matt Holman, president and GM of Dickies Arena, Tim Love, Fort Worth's restaurant and official chef of Austin City Limits Festival. All very powerful, circulated people who are, you talk about the room where it happens. Like, so what is this, like, these ambassadors? No, it's your friends. It's the people you chess move Fort Worth on. And then it's just, I don't know. It's just, it's getting, I feel like there needs to be much more accountability around how we spend money, to Sundance Square, Visit Fort Worth, to all those things. And there needs to be why, and a lot more like clarity on why we're doing these things. Because here's the thing. Visit Fort Worth is great. Everyone who works at Visit Fort Worth work really hard. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's just like, what is the basis of the establishment being set up? And I know we're able to, because it's really resourced, it's able to give money to a ton of people. And what happens when you give money to a ton of people, especially black and brown artists who never get money for anything? They don't talk bad about you because you grease their hands. It's like the ultimate grease show to Sasha Baskin to do and develop and do things that they want to do, so then they don't have to have accountability to an event like this and bringing Cook along.
Yeah, and like the next step, and one of the questions that Fort Worth Report posed but didn't get answered is, let's start going through all the other stuff that he's been given by the Basses. Like, we need to get a comprehensive list of how much he has been given by these people, because I think we know that he is compromised on more things than just Sundance Square, but like, let's get the numbers so that we can see how compromised, and then we as voters have something like concrete and tangible to start telling our city councilors, hey, you need to vote to remove this guy because he is not an impartial promoter of the city. Since 2000, the city has entered into 35 contracts with Sundance Square, and over 290 ordinances passed by the city by the city council mention Sundance Square. And like, some of these ordinances might be willy-nilly, like don't really make a difference. But we're talking about making downtown and Sundance Square accessible and attractive to locals. Like 290 ordinances is a lot, and a lot of influence that, David Cook is kind of behind the scenes pulling the strings on.
Yeah, I mean, that means the city, you can't just say remove Sundance Square and then it's done. Look at, like, they touch every part of the city. And I saw the Fort Worth Business Press columnist editor. I sent that to you, Connor, Richard Connor, I think his name is. But he railed on this. He railed on, like, you're making $330,000 and now you're getting not having to do your job, but financially you still get paid the same. Because Sundance Square is a lot of your job. If there's 290 ordinances and 35 contracts, that's a lot of your time. So if you're not making decisions on it, but yet you get paid the same, it just seems very. I don't know what to do from here. When I get emails or like text messages from people from our pod, it's like, this guy needs to go, right? This guy needs to go. That's what people, and to me, in 817 pod energy land. But will the average person get their city council person riled up to do this? And you can just tell, I mean, the city council has become a useful, friendly place. They all love each other. It's kumbaya. We're young and learning Fort Worth together. We're the new hip people in town. So I don't know who in that room is going to have a backbone to be like, no, this was wrong. Or like, no, you need to get out of here. There's nobody with that kind of like, I'm coming for you. Because I think they're still developing their own maturity as a politician and as a leader of the city. So like, how do you press the most powerful person to like, we need to remove him?
Yeah.
And get enough backing.
Yeah. And to me, and like the Fort Worth Business Press editorial kind of like made this hit home. To me, David Cook seems to have pissed off a couple too many people a couple too many times. This feels like very deliberate kind of like hit pieces on him, right? Like, this has been going on for a long time. Fort Worth Business Press, as far as I know, never wrote an article about, Betsy Price needing to do something about it. This is the first time that we're getting this massive expose on, him flying on their private planes, even though we know that it's been happening. So I'm getting the feeling that there is someone or a group of people that want to replace him as city manager. And so the hits are starting to come out. And I'd say it's a, pretty effective strategy for a guy that doesn't have any like excuses or good explanation for his behavior. There's no like way of really trying to explain your way out of this. Like, you are caught in a corner and we just need to put the information out there so that there's enough reason for us to make this change. So I think come after maybe like next council election, when a lot of these council members, I assume, will run again, the majority will probably win again. They can kind of like cement their places on the council a little bit more now in their second term. And so maybe then we start to get some movement on it. But to me, these are like very deliberate nuggets of information that are getting leaked or put out there to try and stir up enough controversy to make it palatable to the average person to make this change.
There's Sundance Square on their Instagram story. I don't know, you see this, like, you then like think about who follows Instagram Sundance. Like, it's just probably people who just like want to check on what's to do, like what's going on downtown. And like, they posted a picture of David Cook And it says Fort Worth has one of the best city managers in the country. We support transparency and understand from reporting earlier this week by the Star Telegram that David decided to recuse from any decisions regarding Sundance pending appeal related to the downtown PID, and we are supportive of the decision. Denise and David Cook remain close friends. So now I guess like that's the other position. Like the position is that David decided to recuse himself from all of this. So like he's now, as the leader, he didn't get punished from this. He just thought, for my best interests and for the people, I'm going to do good and just keep myself out of Sundance.
Yeah.
So,
well, and two, I think like something has to come of this because like Fort Worth Report is financially supported by the Sid Richardson Foundation, of which Ed Bass is a board member. Like, this is where a lot of their influence lies. So, like, they're taking a step out in really hitting hard on this. I imagine the Star Telegram has a lot of those hands on them, too. So, like, this is a biting the hand that feeds you thing, which
Massive, yeah.
doesn't happen in Fort Worth a ton or very often. And so it feels like something needs to come of this because, yes, I appreciate that they're just doing good journalism, but like there's financial implications for them here too.
yeah. And there's a ton to keep going on, I feel. Like, I was actually one of the points I was going to say is, like, keep going, Fort Worth Report. Keep going, Star Telegram. There's so much history and data here. Is it safe to say we know that's the only time he's been on their private jet? Is it safe? Do we know that? Like, or did he just get busted? You know, like, keep going. There's historical data here, so we just got to keep finding. And, like, how do we make decisions on what Fort Worth is going to go to and set up, you know, marketing for? And it's just like, I feel like Fort Worth after this article is like the Basses just bought a Birkin bag and they're showing it off. And this is how it is. Like, our city is their fancy purse. And that's what it is. Like, you know, some people buy $2,000 purses. They buy 1 million populated cities. And then they walk around with it like a Birkin bag. You know, so, and then we fund it and allow them to do that. And, you know, and it's just, yeah, it's, again, crazy stuff. And we'll see what happens next. You have any last minute things there?
No, I think that's a great analogy for it. Is like they have taken out their shiny thing that they have paid for. They're showing it off, and it turns out that there's snakes inside. And for the first time, like, everybody is getting to see what they're carrying around in the bag in their shiny thing. And now we hopefully get to do something with it.
Yeah, because, and here's the thing, though. You also talked about how there's a consequence to the Fort Worth Report and Star Telegram. There's also a consequence to the city of Fort Worth. What if they were like, you know what? This place is a bunch of whiners. We're out of here.
We're going to take our ball and go home.
Yeah. And like Bass has decided to leave. Hey, we're going to sell everything in Fort Worth. We're getting out of here. Then like, but I think Fort Worth is valuable enough of an opportunity where some other rich person comes and grabs it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we've seen it has not taken very long for Crockett Row to sell, for the Foundry to sell. Like, if they decided to sell it, somebody will probably sell everything that they, you know, own in Fort Worth. I think somebody will come in and realistically run it much better than they have been.
Yeah. Cool. Let's go ahead and head into wins and losses. If you are a listener of the pod and you have an opinion on this story, I love getting emails and text messages and hearing what you have to say. But I would just love to know what your thoughts are. As you know, after this reporting, I just feel like it wasn't just about the PJ ride. It's just so much more into how we operate our city to please our billionaires. Wins and losses.
Yeah. I will I'll start with my loss, and maybe it's a stretch, it's kind of nitpicky, but this article in Texas Highways this week was about how Fort Worth is cool now, reinventing Cowtown, and it felt like, Visit Fort Worth wrote this article as like a press release. Not that the writing itself is bad or anything, but it did not feel to me like it really captured the vibe of the city of Fort Worth that well. I don't know. Did you get that from reading this article too?
Oh, I mean, when your recommendation is the Hot Biscuit place, I mean, I'm over it.
Which I'm excited to try the burger place. I knew it was there, but have never been there. The one that they start out talking about in the stockyard.
Hooker's Grill?
Yeah. But yeah, it felt like they were really missing on like what makes Fort Worth special, and instead just kind of hitting the, whatever like Fort Worth decides to advertise about itself.
Yeah, Fort Worth will be a big city when one day it could talk about itself without Cowboys, Longhorns, and boots.
And it's not like, if you're coming to visit Fort Worth for a weekend, like, yeah, you should go see the stockyards, and like, yeah, Mule Alley is well done, but they're like the sanitized versions of Fort Worth that to me don't provide a ton of like character, because they're well groomed and like shapen in a way to try and present this image of Fort Worth. And I just think that we have a lot of really awesome stuff going on that continues to just kind of get glossed over. So when I read this article, at first I was like, oh, like, that's cool. And then like I kept reading more, and I'm like, okay, like this is just another, somebody hitting what they've been told are the highlights of the city, and not really like getting into a lot of the great stuff we have going on.
There's ways that you could have, like, I'm thinking like there's a way to talk about Fort Worth here and have no Cowtown stuff. I mean, and I know it's about that. And again, I know, hey, it's all good. But like, I just like, you could have like gone with like a great example is Doc's Records. Like that's a great example of, hey, here's a hipster city.
Instead of Double Oak Tag. Yeah.
Like Doc's Records, here's a hipster city. Look at these, hipster city. Montgomery Plaza and like the cool antique place in the history of Fort Worth, that all that, the Montgomery Plaza, and there's a hidden secret garden in there, a cafe. There's another great example. You can Tiki Lounge. Oh, a little Hawaii. You want to go explore a Hawaiian Tiki Lounge? Go into this place, Tarantulas. Like there's so many ways to make Fort Worth like cool and modern. But we're so tied to this stuff, which is, I actually, Hotel Drover Lobby Bar, when I go take people to Stockyards, I love getting my little margarita there. There's like a margarita, it's red, I forget, I think it's like a raspberry margarita or something like that, jalapeno margarita. I get it when I go to the lobby, right? Hotel Dries, I go to that lobby. Panther City Barbecue, just recommended that to someone yesterday. So there's positives here. It's just, we gotta always do this Cowtown stick, and it doesn't have to be that. And I think Visit Fort Worth, or whoever does these articles, think, oh, because now we show black and brown and Hispanic people playing Cowboys, Cowboys is okay. When really it's like, no, there's other things that we do as Fort Worth. And we also got to be real on what, again, like we always talk about, what Cowboys represent in politics in Texas. So that's all we got to be good with. But all in all, Texas Highway, never seen the magazine in my life. I lived in Texas since I was 8. So let's keep going. My loss. Look, actually, my loss is nothing to do with Fort Worth. It actually has to do with Dallas. Look, I would have went all in and went really upset if Mayor Matty Parker did a tweet that said, "Always a pleasure to welcome Governor Abbott back home for the Red River Shootout at the storied Cotton Bowl Stadium during the State Fair of Texas. A genuine Dallas tradition like no other. What a game." So then he has a picture of him, like Eric Johnson shaking Governor Abbott's hand, and like, always a pleasure to welcome Governor Abbott back home to Dallas. Like, really, I mean, less than 24 hours from when we're recording here. And to me, the loss is just like, yes, as a politician, as a mayor, when you meet somebody, especially your governor, it needs to be respect. I mean, you saw Biden and DeSantis. They had to do it on camera. They had to show respect to each other, be nice to each other. But pitting a tweet on your account, which acknowledges your tweets is basically what you endorse and what you do, and you say something as like, I don't think like this was smart, especially during the election, especially when we're about to vote in 14 days. I thought it was a loss on Mayor Eric Johnson for having this tweet out during an important time. And that's my thing.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. At first I was like, yeah, like obviously they have to play nice, but like, yeah, you don't have to tweet about it, especially in the like current season. So I get where you're coming from with that. I'll go with my win. I'm glad Fort Worth Report covered this, but Light the Trail is an 1,800-mile bike ride from the Canadian border to the Gulf of Mexico that is currently happening. They stop in 14 cities, and the goal of the ride is to raise awareness of resources available for those who are struggling with mental health so that they can easily get treatment without barriers. There are 10 people from Fort Worth that are currently doing this ride. And I know one of them that is doing it, and so I've been excited to follow along, and so it really caught my eye that Fort Worth Report is covering this and raising awareness of it as well. So my win is one that, like, this got publication, and two, that we have people behind this organization in Fort Worth that are out doing this right now. If you want to learn more, make sure you go to that article, and you can find out ways to support financially or, words of encouragement. Find a way to find these riders on Instagram, wherever, send them a message of thanks and encouragement, because 1,800 miles is a long way to ride a bike.
Oh, yeah. Big time. I'm going to go ahead and do my win on the Gulfstream Aerospace Corporation. They have recently opened up their new center in Fort Worth Alliance Airport last Tuesday. It's an 82,000 square foot hangar, and it can accommodate up to 9 aircrafts. The president of customer support likened the approximately $55 million service center to a maintenance garage. But what's cool about it, it's also going to provide employment to 200 workers. Some will transfer from Love Field, and others will be hired from local colleges, according to a Gulfstream release. Gulfstream is partnering with Tarrant County College Airframe and Power Plant Program, and will hire some of the new technicians from there. So all in all, just really, when we can take jobs from Dallas and get people to move to Fort Worth, it's a win.
Always a win.
Yes.
Well, cool. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Like we said at the start of the show, we'll be gone for the next 2 weeks. So if there's any episodes you've missed out on, take it as a time to catch up, and we'll be excited to come back to you on Halloween.
Yeah, and also the note, I know we also had the Hotel Dry Thing 6 to 8 p.m., November 7th. Jimmy and EJ will be there, having drinks, hanging out in Dryce Hotel's lobby. November 7th, 6 to 8. We'd love to see you. Come through.
Peace.